I, a 32-year-old female, used to have a job cleaning movie theaters in my early 20s. Because of how bad I needed the cash, I worked a string of crappy jobs around that time, but that one was the worst, and for a bunch of different reasons, too. Firstly, people who go to the movie theaters are just disgusting. Okay, maybe not all of y'all, and if you're one of the good ones, I thank you from the bottom of my boobs. But oh my god, it's like people were legitimately out there thinking, what is the single most disgusting thing that I can leave in this dark theater? And they went ahead and just did it. I found full diapers, needles, nail clippings, and then there's the time someone puked into an empty bag of chips and then somehow partially sealed the bag again, meaning one of my coworkers just grabbed it up off the floor and ended up with puke all over their shoes. There was like a ton of other stuff that we found that would end up with this post getting a not safe for work tag, so I'll just get into my next point and leave y'all in suspense. There's a bunch of other stuff that I hated about working that job, but without a doubt, the worst thing was the lack of security. The shift started at 2 a.m. Yeah, 2 in the morning, so there was that part that made me hate it. But getting to and from whatever theater we were cleaning with no means of transport aside from a bicycle put me in a very vulnerable position. That and the venues we cleaned didn't hire anyone but lazy, overweight, or meek-looking security guards to keep us safe. On a slow weekday night, I decided to go out and pick up the trash in the parking lot. This was maybe 4:30 to 5 in the morning, and the theater was also next to a super busy road, so people passing by could see into the well-lit but deserted parking lot clear as day. I had headphones in, along with the grabby stick thing to pick up gross stuff, when I suddenly get a call from my boss who was inside the building. I click the little button on my headphones wire to answer the call, only to hear my boss on the other end with a kind of concerned tone in her voice. She tells me again with this anxious tint to her voice that some truck just pulled into the parking lot opposite to where I was. She thought the guy was acting a bit suspicious, so I was to finish what I was doing immediately and come back inside. No sooner that she says that, but what I assumed was the same truck pulls right next to me and stops so quick that the tires actually screech. It all happened so fast that I just kind of panicked and froze up. But when the van's sliding door slid open, and I saw a guy with a shirt wrapped around his face leap out in my direction, I dropped everything and ran. There was only a few feet between me and the door, and I don't want to think about what would have happened if it had been any further away. Every single step that I took felt like it'd be my last before this shirt-faced guy took my legs out from under me, and when I got to the door, grabbed the little shutter bar and turned to slam it closed, he was right there in front of me. He couldn't have been any more than a second or two from getting a good firm grip of the door frame, and as it stood, he did manage to get his fingers on it, but it just so happened to be right as I slammed the door shut. The howl that he let out was satisfying on a primal level that I can barely put into words. Hurting a person that was trying to hurt me, it felt like the kind of instant karma that only comes around once in a lifetime. But as much as it felt great, we still weren't clear from danger, and later on, when the adrenaline high wore off, I was a complete nervous wreck. The cops were called, I gave a statement, and at the end of my shift, everyone took cabs home instead of walking or biking or taking early morning buses. It was like we all know that it could have been any one of us out there. Maybe if it had been someone a little slower than me, things would have been a lot different towards the end of that shift. And I think because of that, it made all my coworkers all the more empathetic, and although I didn't stay in that job for much longer after that, I still have a hell of a lot of affection for all the girls that I used to clean those theaters with. Maybe I'd have stayed a little longer if the theaters that we hopped between decided to beef up their nighttime security a little, but I think the most that we were ever promised was one extra overnight security guard and the placement of a few security cameras. That wasn't good enough for me, though, and as I mentioned, I ended up quitting a few weeks after this incident. I felt very guilty for a while, though, because I was young and free enough to be able to quit if I wanted to, but most of my coworkers were not in that same position. They needed the money too bad to just up and leave a secure job like that, meaning they had no choice but to put themselves at risk, night after night, to take care of their families. And for that, as well as how well they took care of me following the most frightening incident of my whole life, I'll never, ever forget them. If you enjoyed this scary story, listen to thousands more, either over on the Let's Read YouTube channel or podcast.